Getting and keeping a syndicated talk show has never been a harder gauntlet to run, and Tamron Hall is among the rarefied few currently doing it. She's even got a rare amount of runway, with her eponymous show having been picked up for a fourth and fifth season through 2024. More recently, Hall has been named the first ever industry ambassador for the National Association of Broadcasters Leadership Foundation, which will see her working on campaigns and fundraising to ensure the nonprofit's future. I'm Michael Depp, editor of TVNewsCheck, and this is Talking TV, the podcast that brings you smart conversations about the business of broadcasting. Up next, a conversation with Tamron Hall, looking at what she's learned about the kind of talk show people want right now and what the NABLF means for the industry's future. Talking TV is brought to you by Futuri, whose Post for TV podcasting system is specifically designed for the needs of TV broadcasters. Post for TV makes going from newscast to podcast an effortless transition. It enables broadcasters to create, publish, analyze, and monetize both broadcast on demand and original podcast series from the same platform. Post for TV is a powerful system for capturing podcast opportunities in a turnkey fashion. It ingests and automatically edits newscast audio for optimum fidelity and publishes blocks or full newscasts to on-demand audio platforms. You can learn more about Post for TV at futurimedia.com/post4tv. Welcome, Tamron Hall, to Talking TV.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Tamron, the last time I spoke with you, you were doing the show from your kitchen in the early days of COVID in very uncertain times. And you're back in the studio now. Things are looking a lot more certain for your show than for some of your competitors. How hard was it for you to keep the show going in those days?
Oh, wow. It's hard to measure because we were all trying to keep our lives going. We were wondering about our children, our parents, our friends, and to measure the difficulty. And I'm still at home, which is why the Bernedoodle is already in the shot saying, hello, we're doing this currently from my home. We are back in studio, but one of the things that came out of course, those difficult days is that we can do conversations like this from our home. And I hope to see you in our studio with the rest of our audience very soon. It's hard to measure because there were things that were a priority over work, and that was personal health, family, and all of those things that at the end of the day really do matter. It's a blur in some ways, to be honest with you, Michael, but then there were moments of sheer excitement that I vividly remember, like returning to the studio and being a TV junkie and a kid who can tell you all of the shows that I've watched since age 7, reminding myself that, like sports, television is a bellwether. Like when Boston returned after the bombing or the Yankees played after 9/11, when people see daytime, especially, reset, it helps them to reset. And so for me, the darkest days of trying to get back on air, I don't remember. I think front of mind was always a worry of my 200 staff members who, were all on the phone and trying to keep a connection and fearful that, we didn't know what was going to be happening economically and beyond. But I'll tell you this, Michael, there was a day, a crew member, and I think it's fair to call him one of those curmudgeon cliche crew members that we all know, great guy. And he walked over to me after we had a live audience to capacity. And I walked out, and after the show, he came over to me with tears in his eyes. He said, that felt good seeing you walk out there and hearing that audience. And we cried together. And here's this crew guy. He's probably been on a lot of daytime shows, and he's been a journeyman in this business, and he's a union guy. And we're there crying, both emotionally connected and reacting in the same way to the audience, applauding me coming out those doors and what that meant.
What have you carried over from that period of time into making the show right now?
Oh, I carried on a reminder of what resilience really means, right? And what TV means, right? If I were not doing this job, honestly, I don't know what I would be doing. This was my backup plan. This was the plan and the backup plan. and not necessarily a talk show. I don't know, that came along the way through a set of circumstances that we all know very well. But it has reminded me of the true spirit of why I think this show works is it's authentic. It's not a big set. It's not an expensive show. It's at the heart of what we all do, which is talk about life. And we were stripped away of any bells and whistles because of the pandemic. And so we learned quickly that there were shows that had $100 million budgets back in the day. That's why daytime kind of fell off, because the budgets were so insane. And so here we were with my baby monitor in the basement and my team on this thing that none of us had heard of, Zoom, and we made the show work. And so we took with that in this season 4 that we're in now, which we've called the Golden Hour. And so I was inspired by Jill Scott's song, Living My Life Like It's Golden. And one day I was out and the sun is shining. I'm taking a selfie with my son. And I said, that's it. It's the golden hour. It's the hour that we spend with our audience each and every day, just talking. And so having been stripped bare of all the bells and whistles that come with daytime television, and now in a room, we went back saying, I'm not going to go to ABC Disney saying, okay, I need this, I need that. Don't get me wrong, we do need things and they've been fantastic. But it allows you to prioritize the TV that I entered into in 1980, 1992, that you don't need all of that to shine or to connect.
The show has been through 3 EPs since its inception. So do you think you settled into an even keel now? And what's most different about the show's current iteration?
I wouldn't say we've been through 3 EPs. What I will say is everything evolves, and every EP along the journey has helped us in different ways. But in reality, whether it's a sports franchise, whether it's a corporation, any business evolves. Very few businesses have the same manager or the same leadership in place, and that includes ABC Disney. You evolve. And so for me, it's finding out what we need. And our current EP, Kiana Burns, and our current co-EP, Shannon High, are both exceptional producers I work with at MSNBC. And what I found was we are a Showtime entertainment daytime show, and the bells and whistles that come with other great shows that have done it from Wendy Williams on. But we're also at our core a news show, right? I'm a journalist, and everything, by the way, is news. I've interviewed political leaders and people not ask me anything about it, but I do a cooking segment on the Today Show, and people come up to me and say, that 5-minute meal wasn't really 5 minutes to make. Because at the end of the day, when you go home, sometimes that's a bigger deal. And so for me, having that sensibility was important. And I believe Kiana and Shannon bring that. But all along the way, one of the things that was so important to me was to make sure that I would not apologize for leading my show and making and suggesting the changes as a woman of color. And at the time, only myself and Wendy Williams were the Black women on TV who created, host, and executive produced the shows that they were on. Everyone else had been a cast member or a part of, in some cases, EPing the show, but with an ensemble. So I went in recognizing that I would not apologize for being the leader that white men are often allowed to be to make their product better. And so that's what we did.
What would be some of the most perceptibly different things about the show in its current iteration, leaving aside the pandemic production and remote, but as the show's evolved, what's most perceptibly different to viewers right now?
I don't think that,
or would those changes be imperceptible and more behind the scenes?
I think we're settling in, we're settling in, and my confidence is at its highest now, and not necessarily the confidence I have in being a broadcaster. I don't watch myself, by the way. I watch clips, but I can't bring myself to watch an entire Tamron Hall because I'm so self-conscious. I'm still that 7-year-old kid from Texas, who practiced on getting rid of my Texas accent. And when I watch it, I hear it. So I think we haven't changed. We've settled in. And that goes back to the authenticity. We are the best that we are in whatever version of our lives when we are allowed to be who we are. And so I'm goofy, but I'm a journalist, and I'm a Virgo, so I go down the rabbit hole. I'm analytical. I'm a lot of things. And the audience, the TAM fam, has allowed me to do that. I am currently doing this in-depth interview with you while a dog is biting my hand. And the audience is okay with that authenticity. And so for me, I think the evolution has been what Dorothy Gale said, my favorite movie, The Wizard of Oz. I was never away from home. It's always been right there. And so we didn't have to search for something. It was always right there. And the answer has always been being authentic.
Well, a talk show's success hinges on its hosts and people connecting with what you are presenting on the air. I wonder, in that period when you're waiting on renewal, you're subject to a lot of executives weighing in on you, they're watching minute changes in the ratings. What is that like? Do you kind of see the show's fate as a kind of referendum on you, or can you kind of separate your professional persona from the personal?
I think I can, because I'm now 52. I think if I'd gotten this show at 37, which, by the way, I'm sure if you came to me and said, "Are you ready for a talk show?" I would have said, "Absolutely. You know, I'm ready. I'm 37 and I'm out there." But I think age has given me calm. I think losing my spot at the Today Show in the way that I did stripped me of ego, because it didn't feel good to be trending the next day under those circumstances. But I think age, I think in this business, having gone from the youngest woman in the newsroom to, in many cases, the oldest, has given me a focus and a balance. I remember a veteran anchor when I was in Chicago. She said to me, "This business either quits you or you quit it as a woman. We're not allowed to age. We're not allowed the space and the grace that men are allowed in this business." And so when I got that second or third act, or whoever is counting, at 48, I think it also gave me a clear understanding of this is part of my life, but not my life. And part of my life includes being a journalist, and I enjoy it thoroughly, but I also love being my kid's mom, and I love writing, and I love creating my own novel as The Wicked Watch in the middle of a pandemic. And so for me, of course, you know, you watch the ratings, they watch you. But I have to say, the feedback from the executives, particularly from ABC, Disney, and Hearst, and all of our partners, they were so supportive. And I think it's maybe because we were all going through something in the pandemic. My dog is trying to steal your show. I feel so bad. This is like the competition gnawing at you. This is what daytime is like. It's like a bird and doodle always nipping at your heels.
This is the bit that's going to go viral. You can watch for it.
I'm so embarrassed.
Ending soon. No problem at all. So, Tamron, this fall we've got two African-American women with talk shows in the offing, Jennifer Hudson and Sherry Shepard, and then Karamo Brown, an African-American man, is taking over from Maury Povich. Do you sense a shift that more widespread diversity is rooting into the talk show space now?
That's a weird question. I'll tell you why. Because the most successful to ever do this talk show thing happened to be a Black woman. And so that we would even be having that conversation how many years since the end of the Oprah Winfrey Show is bizarre in itself. Because if she did not prove that audiences from all walks of life, from the fictitious middle America that we've all been told about, to the heartland that is as diverse as any other place these days. It may not be Black and white, but it's socioeconomically diverse. If we didn't learn from that, wow, can we learn? So I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. I also say to people, be careful with lumping us all in. We happen to all be African-American and proud of who we are, but we do different things. And do we clump white hosts in? How many white daytime talk shows are there? Excuse me. How many white daytime talk shows are there? Would you lump Kelly Clarkson and Drew? If you were interviewing Kelly right now, would you say, "Oh, there's another white talk show, Drew Barrymore"? We wouldn't, because we do different things. Karamo's not a journalist, and Sherry's an outstanding comedian. He's an outstanding host. We happen to all be Black, but we all do something different. And so I would say part of the diversity conversation in our industry is not clumping us together and recognizing the individual remarkable journeys that we've had in getting these talk shows and the connection that we have with our audiences.
Tamron, let's talk about the NAB Leadership Foundation, which of course has a goal of diversifying the people leading this industry. TVNewsCheck's long been a supporter of the NABLF via our annual Women in Technology Awards, which benefits them. And I'm interested, how did you get to be involved?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with Emerson Coleman Hurst, which is a partner of the Tamron Hall show, and the discussion of what I want to contribute to the industry beyond my talk show, beyond my years as a journalist, what can I bring to the dialogue? And this outreach component in the next generation kept coming up. And what do I do as the first Black woman to ever host the daytime Today Show, the weekday Today Show? What can I do to help move the needle? And it came to my attention that this outreach had been a big part and a big priority for the NAB. And what can I bring to the dialogue? My story, the experiences that I've had, this wide range from the traditional world of reporting in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Chicago, all the way up to the conglomerate that is the Today Show, and then on to my own talk show. So it came really organically, Michael, but the spirit and the intention was really born from my desire to leave an imprint in the industry beyond the work on TV, and mentor and advocate and help. So many times when we've gone to hire a staff, even with the daytime talk show that I have, you recognize that many of the people who would be great in the spot don't even know the spot exists. They are not in the pipeline. They don't know. I mean, and I don't mean that from just this, the view of black and white, right? I'm from a very tiny town, Luling, Texas. You know, socioeconomically, most people there live below the poverty line. But I am here talking to you and, you know, and talking about my show. And that's because I happen to have a great teacher who in high school knew someone who was a journalist at the Star Telegram in Fort Worth, Texas. And I went and said what I wanted to do. And this person took me under their wing and I got $1,000 scholarship to pay for some books at Temple University. But it was this weird and chaotic life that I've lived in many ways that put me in the right room at this tiny paper in Fort Worth, Texas, that led to me being here. And I want the opportunity to be more readily available to the next generation, whether they're in front of the camera, behind the camera, in the executive office, whatever it is, because the best of this industry and the best of what we do is when everybody has a seat at the table. And how does that happen? It may happen through them hearing me speak somewhere. Okay, Tamron Hall mentioned this in NAB. So that's how it was born.
So what are you going to be doing for NABLF? Will you be mentoring directly or?
Anything they ask, honestly. And I mean that sincerely, from mentoring to speaking engagements to conferences, spreading the word. You might not have noticed, but I like to talk a lot. So, you know what I mean? It's using my voice and my platform and my story. You know, my story is this industry story. So often people believe that folks are let in the room, nepotism or connections. I had neither of those. And what I did have were people who were willing to mentor. What I did have were examples of it being possible. WFAA TV, 1978, my dad pointed to the TV and said, if you get your grades up, that can be you. He was pointing at Iola Johnson, the first Black woman to ever anchor the news in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I later got a chance to meet her at a little conference for the Junior League, you know, these weird occurrences. So whatever they asked me to do, both in fundraising and in outreach and being accessible.
Just lastly, I want to ask you, if you were to find a young person out there right now at the beginnings of her potential career in broadcasting, knowing what you know now, having done what you've done so far, what would you tell her?
That is a big question. And there are many answers to it.
And you can be as frank as you want in that.
Oh, I understand. The daytime version of me would say, don't let them change you. Stick to the plan. The news version of me would say, it's a business. Don't forget that. And the local reporter would say, this is the most awesome job you'll ever have. Use it responsibly.
All right, some advice for the ages then. Tamron, it's been so nice to speak to you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that my 5-month-old Bernedoodle Exodus clearly is looking for a job. So if you put anything up for a dog that's needed in the TV world, she's available. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
No problem at all. You can watch past episodes of Talking TV on the TVN videos page at TVNewsCheck.com. And you should keep that homepage open because we always have continuously updated industry news there on the site. Talking TV is also on YouTube, where we are only slightly trailing Tamron Hall in followers and likes. And Tamron and I now have a $100 bet that those tables will be turned imminently. So give it to us. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode, and see you next time. A new episode of Talking TV is available most Fridays on TVNewsCheck.com. You can also listen and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.